Okay, well, welcome to this Flow360 online training webinar. This session today is really to provide a broad overview of Flow360 for those that are new to it, who have not seen it before, or maybe to give a good overview for those people who are just starting out using Flow360. Flow360, an online solution that covers a number of different user types, from owners of sites at the top end, so this might be, for example, the governing body or the organization that owns a particular establishment, down through client administrators versus through to managers, and that includes managers of all of the different service areas that might be operational on a particular site, including obviously facilities, premises, things like catering, grounds, IT support, portering, and others. And then on down to the service providers who interface with the managers in order to receive works instructions and orders, or to manage incoming help desk issues or service requests. And the service provider side in Flow360 includes both internal workforce and external service providers and contractors. Beyond that, we include access to the solution by surveyors, and this can include, of course, quantity surveyors, as well as those people undertaking condition surveys or inputting initial data on buildings, rooms, and contents and objects in and around the grounds of a site. And we also, of course, cover the individual members of staff who operate on the site, and that includes people like teachers or service providers on site, as well as care staff in the care sector, for example, or other general users of the site who would have access to a more limited range of information and capability, but would still be able to log issues so that they can make service requests and report when things are failing. I'm currently logged into our demo solution as a manager, someone wearing a manager's hat, and what we see on the front screen here is a configurable setup, and this is our standard setup that I'm looking at the moment for managers. And exactly which buttons I have available around this front logo is entirely up to me, and I can configure that using my user preferences. And hopefully we'll have time a little bit later in this session to look at some of those preference options. But what I want to start with is looking at how you set Flow360 up. Where would you begin? And typically that would be with your assets, that is your sites, your buildings, the contents of rooms, the defined areas of grounds, vehicles, and so on. And in order to access that set of information in my demo, I can simply click on the Sites button. Now, when I click on the Sites button, I get a list of any and all sites where I, as a user, have some sort of involvement. Now, as a manager, that might mean actually that I manage the facility, or that I help manage the site across multiple sites and potentially for multiple different clients. And in this case, I've got 5 sites listed. We're looking principally here at education sites, and I'm going to drill down now into one of these sites. So when we're looking at this form, we have some standard buttons, and on the left-hand side, the very left of each row, I can see an Omit button. That simply allows me to drop this record off the list. And the next button is a key one. It's called the Go To button, and that takes me to the object that it is located next to. So in this case, looking at the sites list, I can click on the King's College button, and that will take me, in this case, through to the King's College site record. Once I am in the resource hierarchy, so I'm now looking at the site level, the next tab, the first tab that's visible here, is the Sections tab, and that allows me to drill on down through the site. Lots of other tabs here, of course, and as I am logged in as a manager, I have access to a broad range of information across the entire site. But for now, we're just going to stick with this first tab, the Sections tab, and I'm going to drill on down through the site. So I'm going to go into the main school, and you can see already we're picking up things like site plans here. I'm going to drill on down into main building, and now we've got a photograph here. You'll understand that we can store documents in Flow360 and link those documents to objects. And in the case of these particular records that we're looking at currently, there is a particular document, a floor plan or a photograph, that is set up on the object record as the key image for that particular object or location. I'm going to go on down into ground floor, and we're going to go, say, on down into room 25. As we drill down through the site, please note that we build up a breadcrumb trail across the top of the screen here, which has a double function. Firstly, it reminds us where we are in the site as we've drilled on down through, so I can see that I am now in room 25 on the ground floor of the main building of the main school of King's College. And if necessary, I can click on any of these sections of the breadcrumb trail in order to jump back up to any of these locations. So if I want to go up to main school, I can simply click on the main school part of that breadcrumb trail and it jumps me back up to main school. The forwards and back buttons here are also quite handy. They allow me to move forwards and backwards along the path that I've taken to get to where I currently am. So if I click the back button at this point, that takes me back into room 25, and of course the forward button will take me in the opposite direction along the path I followed. So that allows you to navigate through the system relatively easily through the solution and through the various assets and objects that you have in Flow360. If you ever get completely stuck and you just need to jump back to the front screen, then this top left button here will allow you simply to jump back to the main start screen, and that takes us back to where we came in. And whilst we're here, I'd like to show you a quick find option that's available that allows you to jump instantly from the start screen to any object, provided you know part of its name or some information about it. In this case, if we wanted to go back to room 25, then I can type room 25 under the Sites button. And in this case, because, of course, as a manager, I have access to multiple sites, in this case, that gives me 4 different matches for room 25. Had it only matched with one of those locations, then it would have jumped me directly to that location without giving me the list to select from first of all. So I'm going to go through to room 25, and we're going to drill down a little bit further. So in room 25, we can see we've got things like bits of equipment and items of furniture, fixtures. And we can also look at the Details tab where we can store additional information about the object or location that we're looking at. In this case, we simply have it flagged as an internal space because it's a room. Let's look at something that gives us a little bit more information, and we're going to jump up to the top and go and look at some boilers. So I know we have some boilers on our sites, Rehamer boilers, Broag Rehamer boilers, and in this case I'm going to drill down into one of those. So from the front screen I've simply typed in the name of a boiler, and that allows me to jump directly now to the record for that particular boiler. And you can see what sort of information we can start putting in. So in this case, we're looking at a boiler with all sorts of components listed. Typically, this might be information that has been collected perhaps by mechanical and electrical engineers undertaking a condition survey and noting all of the different component parts as they go. On the Details tab, we can look at all sorts of custom data. Now, this is completely up to you as to how much information you want to put into Flow360, how extensive you want that to be, but bear in mind that all of this information is fully searchable. So from the front screen, for instance, I could pick up the serial number, I could go to the front screen and type that serial number in, and it would jump me directly to an object or any object that has that item of information against it. So the custom data is a very useful way of simply adding additional information, both in terms of providing useful notes and reference information for people who are accessing the resources within Flow360, but also to allow you to group objects and locations together by using these custom data labels effectively as tags. So in this case, on this boiler, we've got a label here that says system and main heating. And if I jump back to the start screen and I want to find all of the objects on my site that are part of the main heating system, then I need to do one extra thing here before executing the search, which is just to tick this little box, and that just confirms here that what I'm doing is extending my search into all of those custom data items. So if I hit return on my keyboard now, I get a list of the objects that I have tagged with system main heating. A very useful way of simply collecting a set of objects together that may otherwise be dispersed across a site or indeed across multiple sites, and allow you to quickly pull together a list of all of those items. And then, if necessary, produce a report output that summarizes information about those objects, or simply allow you to jump directly to the relevant record card by clicking the Go To button. So that was a quick jump through the asset register information, and we've looked at locations and objects. Let's just look very quickly at how we might add a new object to a room. I'm going to use my breadcrumb trail here to jump back up to the ground floor, and I'm going to go into Lab 1. And we have no items listed currently in Lab 1, so what I'm going to do is add a new object. In this case, I want to add a printer to this room location. So while I'm looking at the items tab, I've got a little plus button here, and if I hover over that, it says add an item, room part, fixture, furniture, etc. And I click on that, and I get the option now to start adding objects. So I want to add a printer. In this case, it's an A3 printer I want to add, and I want simply to put that in as an object. So I can add it and click the confirm button. Now you may have noticed if I go back to that form and let's start adding something else in here. Let's say we have an electric heater, that I can also at the same time add resource actions. So at the same time when I'm adding an object to a location, I can also say, and we need to service this item. So let's put in as well a standard annual service. So we're saying the action required is a service. When do I want that to start? Well, let's move this forward a little bit and say, well, I think 1st of May would be fine. We'll assign a priority to it, and we'll also assign a repeat interval to it. So let's say we want to service this particular heater on an annual basis. So I'll put a 1-year repeat on here, and the amount of time needed, let's say it's a relatively quick thing to do, just to check it out, and we'll allocate 20 minutes to that. So now when I hit the confirm button, it's going to add this electric heater to the location, and at the same time it's going to set up this repeat service task. So let's just do that. So I hit the confirm button, we can see we've got the electric heater in there, and if I now go to the tasks tab for the heater, I can see that service has also been set up. So we're now looking at planned actions, scheduled tasks that can be added to Flow360, and we've just done that at the same time as we have added an electric heater to the system. And if we click the little Go To button on this task record, that takes us to the full record for the task itself, where we can see some of the things that we entered. when we added the task along with the heater, which are the fact that we're repeating this task annually and that we were allocated a notional 20 minutes to that particular task. We can, if we want to, put a cost against that as well. So we can build up a program of works, scheduled actions that include costings, and those costings can, of course, come from rates that have been submitted to you by your preferred suppliers and contractors. And you can, in fact, even use Flow360 to put together a program of works and then send that program out to external contractors in order to ask them to tender rates back to you so that you can store those rates in the system and then use those rates both for your cost projections as you're looking at your committed works over the next few months or years, and also to attach those rates to works instructions or works orders that you send out to those same contractors. And if they have tendered rates already stored in the system from them to you, then when you send them an order, it has that information, it has those rates already added to it. So it begins to simplify the process of both estimating what works are going to cost, but also it informs budget setting when we're looking at things like forward planning and deciding on budgets for particular cost sectors and accounts. So let's jump back to the start, and I just want to explore a little bit more some of those options in relation to planned programs of works. So I'm going to go to my Sites button. We're going to go back to the King's College site, and now I'm going to click on the Tasks tab whilst I'm looking at the site record itself. And you can see it's brought up a number of things that are currently scheduled. And I'd just like to draw your attention to the fact that here it's saying this is for the next 6 months. I can set up my preferences as a user, which then say every time I look at the Tasks tab, wherever I am in the system, by default, only go this far into the future. Otherwise, we could end up with a very unwieldy list with hundreds or even thousands of tasks on it, which is not terribly informative. And the key thing usually is that you want to know what's coming up in the next few weeks or months. So in this case, I've got my preferences set for 6 months. We can, of course, filter this list, and we can also sort the list. Wherever we are in the system looking at lists of objects, simply clicking the column headers allows us to sort it. So if I want to sort these planned tasks by the due date, for instance, you can see we've got some things hanging around that are very overdue by now. And I can reverse sort that list by clicking the same column header again. So that allows me to organize the information I'm looking at. And if we come back to the buttons that are available to us here, we've already come across this Omit button when we were looking at the site record. This allows me simply to drop information, to drop individual records off the list because I'm saying, actually, right now, I'm not interested in that one. I don't want to see it, and I can just omit it. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't delete the task. It doesn't remove it. And in fact, having mentioned the word delete, I'd like to point out that in Flow360, once something has a history, it cannot simply be deleted. So the important element of maintaining a proper audit trail and a history of events is guaranteed. You cannot remove stuff once it has a history. So this is my list, and it's a general list of all things across all levels of the site. As I drill down through the site, so if we go to sections and we say we go to main school and we drill on down, say, into the library, if I hit the tasks tab at this point, I'm only going to see tasks for the library. And in this case, there is only one currently scheduled, which is a buildings inspection. So let's jump back up to the site level, go back to my tasks tab here. And of course, now we're seeing a whole range of things across the entire site again. Let's just have a look at how we can filter this information, because very often just a complete list on its own isn't terribly useful. So let's pop up the filters and say, I need to focus in here. I need to look at, let's say, electrical works. And what I'm interested in is what we might have in the program for the next couple of years, or even just the next single year. So let's just say next year. And I'd like some costs in there where we have them available so that I can begin to get a handle on what we might be committed to. So I'll hit the confirm on that filter now. And that's now going to look at bringing together all of those tasks that have been flagged as electrical and that are scheduled to happen within the next year. But note that it has by default also included overdue tasks. This is quite important because in theory, of course, if you're looking at what do we need to cover for the next year, that is going to include tasks that you originally scheduled for earlier but that have not yet been done. Those tasks are still waiting to be done, and therefore in theory they are still part of your program for the next year. If you want to, you can of course omit those. So there's an option on the filter panel when you pop that up to say don't include the overdue tasks, just show me my planned program for the next year, and we'll just ignore the stuff that we haven't actually managed to cover yet. That doesn't remove them, of course, that they will still be hanging around. Having performed that filter, it's then very useful to be able to summarize this information in some way. Maybe we need to produce a report to take forward to a board meeting or governor's meeting to look at the planned program in relation to budget setting for the next year or few years, or maybe in relation to looking at resourcing, looking at manpower, and capabilities within our organisation to manage this programme of works. And a useful summary to all of this is to look at it by, say, asset level, that is the building level, and priority, because that gives us a good feel for what in our list is actually high priority and what maybe we might consider doing at another time. And the report that we get at this point then shows us level by level across the site. So the orange level here is the client level, so King's College is the client in this case, and King's College, then the yellow bar is the site itself, and then we've come down to the subsection of the site, which is main school, and then main building, and then priority level by priority level, we can see of those electrical tasks, and remember that's what we filtered for. We looked for electrical tasks that are due, scheduled within the next year. And that is now showing me all of those tasks sorted out by assigned priorities. So the reporting is a very useful and easy way of summarizing a set of information. So we've had a little look now at asset information, putting the basic asset information in, finding the asset information, looking at those custom data tags that allow us to categorize and group objects together. And we've had a brief look at planned programs of work. Let's have a look now at what happens on the reactive side. You can see all sorts of other buttons here that hint at other capabilities within Flow360. We certainly don't have time in this session to look at all of this. But what I would like to look at right now is help desk reporting and how a member of staff, for instance, logs the fact that there is a fault. Now I'm going to do this by logging out as Tim. I'm logged in currently as a manager, and I'm going to come back into our demo as just a member of staff. And in this case, I'm going to come in as a lady called Anne Jeffries. And we're going to log in just as a member of staff. Now, immediately you see we have a different startup screen here. We have 3 different startup screen options. The one we were looking at when we were logged in as a manager is our standard option with up to 9 buttons around our central logo. And whilst we're talking about logos, I'd like to point out you can white label this, so of course you can have your own logo in there rather than the Flow360 one. What we're looking at here in terms of start screen now is a much simplified start screen with up to 3 buttons only, and typically this is used for general members of staff. who are not going to be interacting with Flow360 that frequently, but will log in order to log a new fault or make a service request, or maybe to review either messages that they've had from other people in relation to issues that they've logged, or to review the current status of issues that they've previously put on the system. And this might be a typical setup here. We've got the My Site button, so that allows Anne to drill down through to her site. Remember, when we were logged in as Tim, we actually had sites rather than My Site, because Tim is active across multiple sites and therefore needs to be able to action and review data across all of those sites. Anne is only active on one site, and therefore the button simply says My Site. And of course, if I click on that button, it will take me back to King's College with a somewhat reduced set of tabs here, because as a general member of staff, there are some limits to the things that she's allowed to look at. But right now, I need to log a new issue. I've been into my classroom, perhaps, and I've noted that something needs fixing, and I need to put that on the system. So I'm simply going to click the button that says New Help Desk Issue. And that pre-fills this form, and it pre-fills it with my location information. So Anne is actually a house matron of one of the boarding houses, and in this case, it's pre-filled the location information down to Bishop Fox's house, which is where Anne is largely based. And maybe it's actually, the location is, let's say we go ground floor and study bedroom 18. As soon as I select study bedroom 18, something has happened down here. I can see that there is already an issue logged on the system, not logged by me, but logged by somebody else, that says the lights are not working in study bedroom 18. So if that was the issue I was about to log, then at this point I can say, fine, someone else has done it. I can simply hit the cancel button at the top, and I don't need to go any further with this. But let's suppose that actually we've got an issue here where the window has been cracked, and I need to log that in. So I've set the location. I've just checked that that hasn't already been logged as an issue, and I've said what the problem is, and I can now simply confirm and log out. So that has put that new issue in the system, and it has automatically informed the relevant team or manager. So let's come back in as Bob and just see what's happened to that issue that Anne has just logged. Oops, sorry, I'm coming in as Tim rather than Bob. That issue that Anne has just put on the system. And as a manager, if I simply go to the help desk list, I can see all help desk issues. This is all issues, all service requests that have been logged in the system by anybody. And in this case, window cracked is the newest issue that's just been logged. And we can see it at the top of the list here. So let's click the little go to button and just review the information that's come in on this one, and maybe assign it out to somebody so that they can get on with it and fix it. You can see some interesting things have happened with that issue having been logged by Anne. First of all, it's automatically picked up the floor plan and brought that forward onto the issue record itself. That's useful information for anyone who's not entirely familiar with Bishop Fox's house and wouldn't necessarily know where study bedroom 18 is. And of course, if they've been assigned to fix that particular issue, then they need that information. And this information is also included on any outgoing work instruction that might be triggered from this issue. So if it was decided that internally we couldn't manage this with the internal workforce, but that we needed to send it on to an outside contractor, then we can use the send button to do that, and it will automatically pick up and include the floor plan. And we can see here on the Docs tab, which is also lit up and bulleted, that it is also picked up some asbestos register information that relates to this room location. All automatic and permanently recorded. So the fact that the asbestos register information was found, was attached to the issue, and was then included on an outgoing works order or instruction is all permanently recorded in the system. So you have that audit trail always available. Let's go back to the Details tab. So this particular issue, we haven't assigned any urgency to it, but we could do. So we could say now, well, okay, I think it's a cracked window. We need to see this fixed relatively quickly. So let's say we put a target on that of 2 days from the date and time when the issue itself was created. And that's automatically set up a target. And if necessary, I can assign a priority, I can assign a work type to it. So all of those things are available. All I am going to do right now is the quick and dirty close, which is basically to say the issue has come in, we've looked at it, and we fixed it. I just wanted to show you quickly how that happens. So if I just simply hit the confirm and close button up here, it automatically pops up the dialog and it fills in this set of information. So it confirms the date and the time, and also adds a little bit of boilerplate text here. Thank you for using Flow360 and so on. And so to close this issue out, I can simply hit the confirm button. And we can see now that the status has gone to closed. We can see that that note has been added. And of course, I could have added additional information to that note if I wanted to. And we'll also see on the Messages tab that various things have been happening in the background as this issue has come in and been looked at by Tim and then indicated as having been completed. And we can see all of these messages have been logged, and some of these have gone back to Anne just to keep her updated on what is going on with this particular issue. So she will now have had those messages. And note that within Flow360, anything that is generated as a message is also typically mirrored to email. So Anne, even if she's not sitting at her computer and doesn't have a device open where she's logged into Flow360, will have received those updates by email as well, and that will allow her simply to log back in. In terms of emails and messaging, I'd like to point out that people can respond to email notifications from Flow360 within their email client, i.e. without having to be logged into Flow360, simply by hitting the reply button. And by hitting the reply button in their email client, typing their message and sending it, that information is automatically sent to the person that the email is targeted at, but is also intercepted and picked up by Flow360 and automatically attached back to the issue or instruction or object that message relates to, so that the messaging thread, the thread of communication, is automatically again maintained and becomes an important part of the audit trail in terms of logging what happened, who said what to whom and when. Note also, whilst we're looking at this now closed issue, that there is a reopen button that's automatically appeared as soon as we close it. That would allow Anne, for instance, as the person who logged the issue, or anyone else as a manager who says, actually, we've still got a problem, this issue has not been fixed yet, we can simply reopen it. And that puts it back into the active set of open issues. I want to have a quick look, before we wrap up this sort of intro session, at some of the reporting options that are available from the help desk list, the sort of KPIs button that we have up here. So a simple report, first of all, which is a handy one just to get a feel for what's currently in the system and who is doing what, is to look at the help desk issues by team and person in charge. So this just immediately gives us a breakdown of all of those active issues by team and the person who's currently dealing with it. So we can see, in this case, the bookings team. There are various things in there. The bookings team are dealing with catering. Have got 10 issues, one of which has been specifically assigned to Joan Wilson. The other 9 are simply being dealt with generally by the team. The electricians team has 12 issues, some of which have been assigned and others are still unassigned just at the team level, and so on as we go down through the full list of current open active issues. So again, we're looking at an example of using the reporting function in Flow360 to simply summarize information in a different way to that which is available to us when we're simply looking at the list view. Remember, of course, that all of these are sortable columns. Let's have a look at KPI options quickly. So there are some interesting things on here. We can do some just basic comparisons. So number of issues open on a date. So if we want to see how many issues were open, let's say at the beginning of January, let's pop back and have a look at that. Or maybe we want to look at some comparisons. Maybe we want to look at the number of issues that are open today with the number of issues that were open 3 months ago. That's an example. We can also restrict that, so we can look for specific issue types, we can look for even specific work types, or issues that have been assigned to a particular service provider, member of the internal workforce, or team. Again, that allows us to look at some performance issues. So we can say, for our internal premises team, how many issues have we currently got open, or how many issues, say, were open at the beginning of this month, compared to the same period of time a year ago or 6 months ago. Maybe we've made some improvements, we think, in terms of how the teams are functioning, and we think we're managing these issues, the volume of issues better, but this is a useful way of making some comparisons there. And we can look at chart outputs for some of these, but let's look at a slightly more interesting one here. Let's say we look at issues closed, issues logged versus issues closed per month across a date range. And the maximum date range here is for 2 years. So let's actually look at 2 years. And this gives me a chart output. So I want to go hit the confirm button here. And we get a chart output that gives us exactly that information. And charts, of course, are useful because they allow us to present the data in a graphical way, which is immediately highlights some things. So we can see immediately here in the 8th period, and if we look at the 8th period here, this was the 1 month period ending 28th of November 2015, we had 89 issues logged and only 25 closed. So we had a massive influx of new issues during that particular month. We might, having viewed that information, of course, we might want to go back and say what happened during that month that produced that sort of volume. So the chart outputs that we can get from using the KPIs button, really useful way of just being able to review information and see that graphically presented in a different way. Again, back to the start. What we have looked at today is the basic asset information, so buildings, rooms, objects in rooms, and so on. Of course, that can extend to vehicles and so on as well. We haven't had a chance to look at that in this session. We've looked at putting together some planned actions, some scheduled tasks, and whilst we're having vehicles in mind, that could include things like, of course, standard annual services, MOT tests, and so on. Those can all be put in as scheduled actions against those objects. And we've had a little look at how an issue is logged. A fault report in this case is logged by a member of staff, and how that is then picked up by the relevant manager and either simply closed out in a simple and quick way, or of course there's the option to send that information on off-site to an outside service provider or contractor as a formal works instruction. And we've had a little look at some of the reporting outputs and discussed that the reports are there as a way of quickly summarizing information. And whilst we're talking about reports quickly, I'll just say that any of the reports you produce, of course, can be saved internally as a snapshot in time, and also output then to PDF or exported to Excel if you need to manipulate that data further or send the resulting report out to somebody else. A huge amount we haven't been able to cover today, of course. This was really just an introductory session, just looking at some very basic things. Whilst we're here, and just before we finish, I'll point you in the direction of the Flow360 guide, which is accessed via that question mark button, which is available on pretty much every screen when you're in the solution. You can also access it directly from our website. And this gives you step-by-step instructions on how to do things. So these are all walkthroughs. So how do I add a new section to a site or sub-resources to a site? And it steps you through the process. It shows you the screenshots and gives you a little bit of additional background information as well. So the user guide, very, very useful, very handy to be able to simply get at that and review how you undertake a particular action. So that is pretty much all we have time for today, and I'm going to wrap this session up. Thank you for attending. I hope that's been a useful introduction. Of course, do go to our website, do look at the user guide, which is there. There's lots of additional information there. And if you have some specific queries or questions that cannot be answered in that way, then of course contact us directly, support@flow360.net, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Thank you for attending today, and see you next time.